I'm joined by Alice and Prospect. We had a sort of a day of gaming recently and brought you both here to talk about it. First of all, welcome, both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me too.
Yeah. Get back to the control room right now. So we played, the idea of the game day was to play Alice is Missing, which is a silent role-playing game where you play a group of teenagers whose friend's missing and you're texting the sort of back and forwards as sort of clues are revealed which may or may not drive the narrative. We're not big role players generally.
Not at all. No.
But this is sort of a one-shot thing that, 2 or 3 hours with. I'd heard really good things about it. I'm like, hey guys, let's play it. So it was us, Karma and Donald. Donald of New Game Plus fame, obviously. What did you guys think of it?
I really liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I liked the texting, but I thought it needed more structure because there were a lot of ways for it to go off the rails, and there were long periods where I was like, well, I don't know what happens. And even when I got clues, it was occasionally too open-ended. Of course, later on when we learned that we were supposed to be using a whole other deck of cards that we'd been ignoring the entire time, that did explain a lot. So that might not have been a game problem, but more of a user problem.
That was the case of everyone playing it for the first time, trying to teach it without having played it before, and then be like, not getting everything across. There was a deck that gives you some narrative sort of hints which may or may not be helpful. Prospect, what did you...
Well, just before, there's narrative deck that may or not give something that might be helpful, and the person who taught us the rules said, this is a deck, but we should only ever use it if we run out of ideas. Try not to touch it. Don't use this deck. But only if we have no ideas.
Who was the person who taught us the rules?
I don't think we need to point fingers at Liam. Okay. Like, I think that would...
We better not then.
Yeah.
To be fair, the rulebook does say use it sparingly.
Yeah.
That's not don't use it. That's just use it every 5 or 10 minutes.
There was a couple of times where I actually showed the rulebook with that page on it to people if they were thinking, but okay, it's fine. Prospect, what do you think? Because I know you're really not a role player, and you, to the point where when we were sort of organising, you're like, oh, I don't really know if I play that much. How did you find the experience?
Yeah, much the same, honestly. Like, as you say, going into it, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can really, fully commit properly to a game that's so reliant on getting into a character. Like the entire experience is that. But again, similarly, I'd heard very good things about the whole game, so I was really on the fence about whether I actually do it or not. And I'm glad I did, because it did pay off. It was a lot of fun. It was a really unique experience. But I do agree, it felt very aimless at times, where you're like, ooh, I want to go investigate this thing. So you type in the chat, I'm going to the lighthouse, or wherever you're going. And then you're just sitting there like, now what?
It's like, how long does it take me to get to the lighthouse?
Can I say that I found something? Like,
What's the setup of the lighthouse? Like, are there rooms? Is there like a thing? Like, how do I open the door?
Yeah, even with the cues that were, it's like, oh, this person is suspicious. And you're like, in what way?
Well,
like,
again, it is very open-ended for narrative that you.
Yes.
There's only a couple of times where it really sort of tells you this is exactly what happened. I found every time I sort of like was coming to like, oh, there's a bit of a lull, it would be like 2 minutes before the next clue was going to be revealed. And like the clues weren't always like, oh my God, this changes everything, but it was enough to sort of get it rolling again. Yeah. Then you also, we're doing it over Discord, so we're also like private messaging people, which is kind of cool because you're like, okay, there's a conversation happening here, then there's the main chat, and then, this conversation didn't really start, and then you can sort of go from there. So I own the copy. I've actually put aside the cards, the clues we played, to then have some more new ones to potentially do it with a different group in like 6 months to a year. Yeah. Would you ever do it again?
I would. And I think the reason why is because it was silent and over Discord. Because I find often when you're playing role-playing games and you're not real big on roleplay, somebody always feels like they have to do a weird voice, usually me. And it instantly breaks everyone out of the immersion because you're just laughing at this weird, stupid voice you're making.
Can you do the voice now?
No. Because it always somehow ends up being weird Mickey Mouse.
It doesn't make me want to roleplay. I still have the desire to play like D&D, but only for the for the actual playing part, less the putting on a silly voice part. Specifically to Alice is Missing, would I play it again? See, this is where I'm not entirely sure, because it comes down to would I play it again with a new group or would I play it again with the same group? And to both those questions, it feels like a very, very different experience in both instances. And it would probably, I don't think I'd play it again with the same group. I feel like we'd be going down all five. Maybe cherry pick one or two.
Wait, so we're cutting out Donald and Karma? It's just going to be the three of us?
Don't watch this. No, but like I feel like the experience, even with like different narrative cues, different clues, different directions, the experience would still be too similar. Because again, the experience when you boil it down is the conversations that we're having with each other. And I feel like even with different cues, we would probably end up with more or less the same conversations.
I know. If you give me 6 months, I'll forget that I've ever had any of those conversations. Like, I reckon I could do it.
Yeah,
clean.
until we start having them again, and then you're like, oh, right.
But it's also then you start drawing into your own. Like we had for a while there, we were talking Buffy as our characters.
Yes.
Because we're like, I got a feeling like, yeah, this relates kind of to Buffy. But then we finished it up. We were like, okay, well, we had this sort of experience. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't quite as emotional and hard-hitting as I've heard some people. But it was certainly a worthwhile experience and a new sort of unique experience for me, at least. But then we decided, let's play some other stuff. So the first game we played was Camel Up, which is sort of a betting racing game as camels go round a track. I think this is everyone's first time playing it. What do you guys think?
It's fine.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
It was a good time. It was.
I also won, so the little bit of
you
endorphin rush bias, but the game's really good.
It wasn't earth-shattering. I don't feel a desperate need to play it again, but I enjoyed the time that I spent with it.
Yeah, I'd seen a lot of reviewers like rate it quite highly, and when I sort of tried to watch some like playthroughs and stuff, it actually kind of looked a little bit more complicated than I initially got from the elevator pitch. But then when we actually played it was just like, oh, actually this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There's just there's a bit of discordant where like you're not the camels themselves, you're the people betting on the camels, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I think the main sort of highlight of the game is you can learn it pretty quickly. It scales pretty well, and you could probably play it in half an hour, 45 minutes, and then be like, okay, we can play it again if we want. And then we went on to Paperback, which is a deck building word game, which you love, and you've talked at length already about Paperback and Hardback, and you really liking those. So we know there's a positive. Prospect, how do you feel about them?
I've never met a deck builder I didn't at least think was okay, and this was better than that. Deck builders are always fun. This one was fun. Even it scratched the sort of Wordle itch, but also betrayed to my friends who already knew how bad my spelling is. But I'm curious for Hardback. You keep going about Hardback now; it's much better, and I think I would need that little bit extra to really be motivated to play it again.
Trying to learn Hardback straight off the bat with nothing. Like, so clearly Paperback is the first draft of what becomes Hardback. And if you try and learn Hardback without having played Paperback, it seems really confusing, and a lot of people just hate it. I have learned this the hard way. But if you start with Paperback and you get most of those mechanics down, and you have a good time, like Paperback is a good game by itself, but Hardback is a brilliant game once you get there. And I don't want to oversell it because I am going to force both of you to play it soon. But also, it's a perfect game, and if you hate it, I will cry.
Oh, okay.
I am keen to try Hardback. I do own Paperback, and I played it 2 times recently, once with you guys, once with another group of friends. And I enjoy it, but I didn't feel the need to own it to the point where I put it onto my trade pile. There's other word games that I like more, like Just One and So Clover, where you're sort of is trying to clue out like connections between words as opposed to spelling. So for me, I like that element a bit more. But again, I am keen to play Hardback, and I'm looking forward to our next game night.